Geek Legion of Doom. This is a superhero movie review, and I'll be having a look at Justice League War. So this is an animated feature, and it's really the first movie or animated movie that takes place in a kind of post-52 universe. Now, in case you don't know what that is, basically in the DC Comics, they kind of rebooted the whole line. All of their comics are sort of at point zero, was commonly known as the New 52, and the idea behind that was essentially so a lot of characters could be kind of updated, and new readers could sort of join and sort of start reading comics at kind of point zero. Now, some people were like this. A lot of people kind of were sort of against sort of the DC 52 reboot. It's kind of, you know, it has its detractors still, but nevertheless, here we are. So, obviously, the last movie was the Flashpoint movie, which really sort of focused on the character of Flash. And this is really kind of a sequel to that, I suppose. And what you got here is essentially a kind of origin story of the Justice League, at least in the New 52 continuity. So basically, we're introduced to kind of the principal players, all have been, who are maybe slightly sort of tweaked to what you've seen them before. And it really tells a story of the kind of the big bad in the DC universe, Darkseid, as he sort of tries to sort of take over the world and kind of ultimately sort of terraform the Earth. And all these sort of heroes sort of come together and sort of put aside their differences to overcome Darkseid and his kind of minions of, I think they're called parademons or something, these kind of like winged creatures that he's sort of transformed from sort of previous worlds that he's sort of conquered. So what's the movie like? It's a very action-packed movie, that's for sure. I mean, the kind of the second half of this movie is pretty much all fight scenes. But it's an entertaining movie, I will certainly say that. Let me just say a couple of negative points about this first of all, then I'm going to go into sort of one of the things I did like about it. So, if you've watched a lot of these kind of DC animated sort of features or even cartoon shows, you'll be very kind of used to certain voice actors. And this movie has got they've recast a lot of the kind of voice actors, and I have to say a lot of them don't work in my opinion. They just don't sound like the characters. Batman, for example, I start hearing him speak, he sounded like Nicolas Cage, I thought. Anyway, but you know, it's not just Batman. I wasn't so keen on the kind of on the voice acting, and the majority of this film. A couple of them were okay, but the majority were not so good. And also the actual characters themselves are kind of, to me, seemed a little bit sort of off kilter, out of character almost. Superman, for example, seems a lot more thuggish than he has in any sort of previous incarnations I've kind of seen of him. So, you know, there's maybe some sort of problems in regards to maybe how they got the characters. I don't know if that's just my personal opinion, I have to say, but you know, I'll be interested to see what anyone else thinks in the comments about that. And the story itself is relatively simplistic. You know, it's basically just these kind of heroes sort of coming together. We also see the origin of Cyborg. Now, this is actually based off actually a comic that actually exists. It's been slightly tweaked. You haven't got Aquaman in this movie, for example. He's been replaced with Shazam, who was previously known as Captain Marvel. I actually quite liked his inclusion of it, I have to say. He was one of my favourite characters in this. You know, most of the characters get a decent amount of screen time. I felt Flash was a little bit shortchanged. You know, there's quite some witty banter in this as well. I did find it quite amusing. In regards to kind of the animation, I thought the animation was top notch. It always tends to always be in these kind of DC movies, these animated movies. They tend to be pretty decent. The art style I actually quite liked. I actually thought it was quite good. I quite enjoyed it. I thought Darkseid was portrayed pretty well. We've seen him before, obviously in an animated form, but I kind of quite liked him here. He seemed you know, quite menacing. I will also, though, in a lot of the fights, as I've mentioned, the last half of this movie is pretty much just one big fight scene, and it's more the kind of, you know, Darkseid sort of throwing people into walls rather than kind of, you know, actually trying to cause any sort of permanent damage, if that makes sense. A lot of the time, which, you know, if you were trying to kill these sort of heroes, you would think you would sort of pull them to pieces and stuff like that. But instead, he's sort of just throwing them through walls, which, I don't know, it's kind of a bit of a cliche thing I kind of see in sort of a lot of these kind of animes sort of shows and stuff like that. And if you were a kind of, I mean, it does have a kind of darker edge to it. There's a little bit of animated gore. There's some beheadings of kind of the minions. There's some mild sort of swearing in there, but you know, so it does have a kind of a bit more of a more adult sort of orientation to it. So, you know, a mild complaint. Overall, though, it was an enjoyable movie. I was never bored. I will say that there is actually a mid-credit scene which kind of sets up a sequel, so make sure you stay for that. It's an entertaining movie. I don't think it was as good as Flashpoint, I've got to say, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed it. I think it's it's an action-packed movie. It's never boring. The animation, the art is all great. Couple of minor issues. I only give it a 7 out of 10. What did you think of it? Leave me a comment. I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.